Have you ever faced a moment where your position, your power, your pride, none of it could help you? Where no amount of money, no influence, no connection could fix what mattered most? That's where this story begins. Not in a palace, not in a synagogue, but in a man's heart crushed beneath the weight of a dying son. If you've ever felt powerless when it mattered most, keep watching. This is for you. And if stories like this touch something inside you, consider liking and subscribing. Here, we're not just retelling ancient events, we're rediscovering hope for today. He was a royal official, a man of rank, possibly in service to King Herod. He was used to giving orders, to seeing things happen when he said so. But not this time. This time, he stood helpless. His son, his boy, was dying. We don't know the boy's name. We don't know his age. But we know his father's pain. You don't need a name for that. It's written in the pleading eyes, the weary shoulders, the sleepless nights. The man was in Capernaum. Jesus was in Cana, more than 20 miles away. 20 miles, think about that. Not a car ride. Not a few exits on the highway. A full day's journey. By foot. Under the heat of the Galilean sun. But desperation does not ask for comfort. It just asks for hope. So he walked, mile after mile, just clinging to his sandals, his heart pounding louder than his steps. Maybe he had heard the stories water turned to wine, healings in other towns. Maybe he had dismissed them before. But when it's your child, suddenly, the unbelievable becomes a lifeline. He reaches Cana, finds Jesus, and doesn't waste time. He begs. Not politely, not with dignity, but with the rawness only a parent in crisis can understand. "Sir," he says, "come down before my child dies." John 4:49, Jesus looks at him not unkindly, but deeply, and speaks words that almost sound like a rebuke. "Unless you people see signs and wonders," he says, "you will never believe." John 4:48. It's a statement that cuts to the heart of a generation hungry for miracles, but blind to the one who performs them. But this man, this father, doesn't argue, doesn't debate theology. He just pleads again. "Please," he whispers, "come." And then Jesus does something unexpected. He doesn't go. He doesn't walk the 20 miles back. He simply says, "Go. Your son will live." John 4:50. That's it. No touch. No visit. No dramatic sign. Just a word. A promise. Now pause here, because this is where the real test begins, not of Jesus' power, but of the Father's trust. Would he believe without seeing? Would he walk back, mile after mile, with nothing but a sentence to hold on to? He does. The official believes the word. He turns, and he walks. Can you imagine that walk back? Every step a battle between faith and fear. Did Jesus really mean it? Is my boy alive? What if? But he keeps going, not with answers, but with belief. And as the sun sets and the journey nears its end, something remarkable happens. Servants come running. Their faces are lit with joy. "Your son is living," they shout. And the man, this father, asks, "What time? When did it happen?" They tell him, "Yesterday, at the 7th hour." And he knows that was the exact moment Jesus spoke. Not a coincidence. Not a lucky turn. A miracle. A promise fulfilled. In the Gospel of John, this is only the second sign Jesus performs. The first was turning water into wine. Both happened in Cana. Both were quiet. No crowds. No spectacle. Just quiet authority and transformed lives. The Father doesn't just rejoice. He believes. And not just him, but his whole household. One word. One walk. One life forever changed. This story reminds us that Jesus doesn't need to be physically near to heal. His power transcends distance. His words are not just hopeful, they're true. But we must trust him, even when we can't yet see the result. Even when we're still on the road. The power of a spoken word. There are miracles that dazzle the eyes. Fire from heaven, seas split in two, the dead raised with a shout. But this story is quiet. It has no thunder, no crowds gasping, no physical action, just a word. And maybe that's why it lingers so deeply. Because most of us live in the in-between moments. We live between the prayer and the answer. Between the diagnosis and the healing. Between the fear and the peace. And in that space, what sustains us is his word. The official in this story was a man of power, influence. He likely had servants, wealth, and connections. But not even power could protect his son. Not even wealth could secure healing. There comes a point in every life when you run out of options. And when that happens, when everything else falls away, what you're left with is who you truly trust. He could have turned bitter, cynical, angry that Jesus wouldn't come to his house, but he didn't. He walked away from Jesus not with proof but with peace. And that's one of the greatest miracles of the story. Not just that the boy was healed, but that the father was changed. He moved from desperation to trust, from pleading to resting, from needing to see to believing what was spoken. John says this was the second sign Jesus performed in Galilee, John 4:54. But think about that. The first sign was in Cana 2 when Jesus turned water into wine at the wedding. That miracle changed a celebration. This miracle changed a family. One brought joy to a party. The other brought life to a dying home. Both came without spectacle. No flash, no thunder, just presence, just power wrapped in gentleness. Let's reflect on something profound. Jesus never touched the boy. He never laid eyes on him. He never stepped into the house. Yet healing flowed instantly across miles. Why? Because his word carries authority beyond space and time. This miracle proves Jesus' power transcends presence. He doesn't need proximity to make an impact. He can speak across distance. He can reach your child, your family, your pain without being physically near. The official learned this firsthand. And we can too, because the same Jesus who said, "Your son will live," still speaks today. What if that's what you need most right now? Not a sign, not a sensation, but a word, a quiet reassurance in the middle of your storm, a whisper, "I see you," a promise, "It will not end in death," a truth, "I am with you always." His word hasn't lost power. It hasn't dulled with time. It doesn't fade like ink or memory. It creates, it restores, it resurrects. And perhaps that's why this story is so timeless, because many of us are like that father. We've come to the end of ourselves. We've prayed, we've pleaded, and now we wait. But we don't wait alone. We wait with a word, spoken by the one who cannot lie, spoken by the one who loved us before we ever knew his name, spoken by the one who doesn't need to show up the way we expect because he's already working in ways we cannot see. The journey from Cana to Capernaum may have ended, but the journey of faith continues. And every time we choose to trust before we see, every time we choose peace over panic, every time we walk forward with nothing but a promise in our pocket, we echo that man's faith. We walk his road, and we bear witness to the quiet miracle of belief. So if you find yourself in that in-between place, between prayer and proof, between longing and light, don't lose heart. Hold on to his word. Let it be enough. Because when Jesus speaks, that's all it takes. When the answer comes before the evidence, the road from Cana to Capernaum is not just a geographical path, it's a journey of the soul. And somewhere along that dusty, sun-baked route, a man chose to believe before he saw. That might sound simple, maybe even expected. But pause for a moment. Because what this royal official did wasn't ordinary. He walked away from Jesus without proof. No sign, no confirmation, no angelic voice saying, "It is done." Just a sentence. And that changes everything. Many of us live by the phrase, "I'll believe it when I see it." But in this story, Jesus flips it. He invites the man and us to believe it before we see it. That's not blind faith. It's trust in the one who speaks. Let's go back to that moment. The man says, "Please come." He likely expects Jesus to accompany him, as other teachers might have done. Walk the road, lay hands on the child, pray over the house. But Jesus does none of that. He simply says, "Go. Your son will live." Imagine what that felt like. Jesus doesn't offer to come. He doesn't explain. He doesn't give a timeline. He just speaks. And then waits. The pause between Jesus' words and the man's response must have been heavy. This father has to decide, do I stay here and demand more? Do I argue? Or do I go? He goes. And that choice echoes louder than any shout. That's faith. Not the kind that waits for results, but the kind that walks into uncertainty with only a promise to carry. Let's look deeper at the timeline, because there's something unusual here. The man met Jesus in Cana around the 7th hour, that's about 1 p.m., but he didn't get home until the next day. Now, Capernaum is a long walk, but it's not more than a day's journey. So why didn't he rush back immediately? Why didn't he run, desperate to confirm? Because he believed. So much so that he likely stayed the night somewhere along the road, resting while trusting. The delay in his return is not a sign of indifference. It's a silent testimony to his peace. He wasn't panicked anymore. The word from Jesus had calmed the storm inside. That's what faith does. It doesn't just wait, it rests. It trusts the voice more than the circumstances. And then, when he finally nears home, the messengers arrive. They're excited, breathless. Your son is alive. Can you feel the relief in that moment? But the father doesn't celebrate just yet. First, he asks a question. What time? Because he knows. If it happened at the exact moment Jesus spoke, then it wasn't chance. It was Christ. The servants say, yesterday, at the 7th hour. And suddenly, everything clicks into place. That moment on the road. That word spoken. That quiet command. It wasn't vague hope. It was divine intervention. But here's the beautiful ripple. The story doesn't stop with one healed boy or one grateful father. John writes, he and his whole household believed. John 4:53. What does that mean? Servants, family, possibly neighbors, maybe even fellow officials. One man's faith became a spark, and that spark lit the faith of many. So often, we want miracles to be loud to part seas, shake mountains, and silence storms. But sometimes, they come quietly, through a sentence whispered on a dusty road, through belief that rests before results, through a long walk home filled not with panic, but peace. This is how Jesus works. Not always in the way we expect, but always in the way we need. And sometimes, the miracle doesn't just change a circumstance. It changes a whole household, a whole legacy. As the official stepped into his home that day, he likely held his son close. And maybe, just maybe, he whispered into the boy's ear. You're here because he spoke. Not shouted, not touched, just spoke. And that was enough.